Okay, I see those microphones all red, so we'll continue on then. As you know, we've been doing a sermon series, getting ready to switch off to a Q&A sermon series, but I'm finishing up the Boldly Going sermon series, and sermon today in that series is called Going Home. And if you remember, if you watched the Star Trek movie number 4, it was called The Voyage Home, and everybody just likes to say, "Oh yeah, that was the one with the whales." Anybody heard that? Somebody say that? If you're a Star Trek fan, I'm going to show just a short clip from that video, and let's see, it was in. Closing that out, no problem. So it's like one continuous storyline and a trilogy within their set of movies that they had. And of course, the movie called The Voyage Home. Here at the end, all the crew is back together, and they're going to serve together. And here they are. They thought they were going to get stuck on a starship they didn't want, but then lo and behold, the Federation built them a brand new Enterprise to replace the one that got destroyed. So they felt like they were home. And "we are home" was the quote there. And of course, then they go off, more adventures. And so today, when I was thinking about how to tie the sermon into the voyage home, going home is what we are doing as Christians. We are on a journey, and we are passing through this life, but our ultimate destination is to be with Jesus. And when we get there, we can say we are going home, and we are home. The path between here and there is somewhat of a mystery. It has been a mystery for a long time, but that is where all those who trust in Jesus and are believers are heading, is to spend forever and eternity with Jesus, wherever that is. And so we're going to read today from 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 to 18. One of the reasons we were inspired for this sermon is last week during the Q&A kickoff sermon, for the Q&A series coming up, a question was asked about the rapture. And so different people understand that differently. And so basically today we're going to share a little bit more about that, because I had a pastor one time that said it's kind of like an airplane ride, except it's really a plane air ride. Taking flight without having an aeroplane. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 13 to 18. And this is concerning believers who have died. I'm reading from the NIV for this passage. Verse 13. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, starting with verse 13. Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind, who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep with him, or in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are alive and who are left until the coming of the Lord will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, and with a shout of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. And after that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. And I want to encourage you that no matter how the events of the end times play out, no matter no matter whether our understanding is correct or whether we are all incorrect, the end of the story is the same. And whether there is more events that happen after this one on earth, or whether this is right up to the very end, it doesn't matter, because the end of the story is the same. The end of the story for Christians is we are going to spend all of eternity forever with the Lord Jesus Christ. And the rest of mankind have no hope. Verse 13. We have hope in Jesus, because without him, there is no hope. We are going home. And it doesn't matter really how it plays out, because in the end, that's what we're shooting for. And of course, there's nobody that passed away on a certain day that woke up that morning and didn't have some kind of plan for the day. Even if they were, with a terminal illness in a hospital. When they woke up that morning, the last day they had conscious thought, they probably maybe expected to have visitors, or they expected to see a nurse they didn't like that came and give them a shot or whatever, When they woke up, they didn't expect, this is my last day. Probably most people just did not. And if it's an unexpected end, which is a very tragic thing, everybody gets up on their last day and they're like, oh, I'm going to have breakfast and I'm going to meet my friend, or, maybe sadly it might be, well, today's another day of loneliness, or whatever, how they spend their day, but they have some expectation that there's going to continue. It's always something we just can't account for, we can't plan for, because we don't know when that day comes. But and everyone here in this passage we're talking about ones who have passed away before. And I remember my grandparents, when I was a very small boy, they would talk about, hey, I wonder, if are we going to go by the way of the grave, or are we going to be in the rapture? In the 50s and 60s, they used to be caretakers of a graveyard and mow the grass and stuff, and they would have a conversation. I wonder if we're going to go this way or that way. And the thing about it is, it don't really matter, because in the end, we're going to be with the Lord and we're going to be home. And that's what I want to encourage you about, is the circumstances of this life. They begin with pain, because childbirth is painful. And they end in pain, because we hate to see loved ones depart from us. We hate to hear about the circumstances that they go. And in this life, we hope that we have some happiness and joy in between. But what we're really going for is, in the end, we're going to be with Jesus, and we're going to be home, and there is never-ending joy in his presence. That's home. John 14, verses 1 through 3. Jesus is talking about home for us. And he says, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. Now, in your translation of the Bible, I'm reading from the New King James Version, because I like that word mansions there. If you switch off into NIV or some other translation, more modern English, they use the word a room or a dwelling place. But heaven is 1,500 miles long and 1,500 miles wide and 1,500 miles tall. There just ain't that many Christians that's going to fill that place. We are going to have lots of room. So I like New King James when it says, in my Father's house are many mansions. We're going to have room, all kinds of room. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. Jesus is not saying, ha ha, joke's on you. He said, no, this is true, because if it wasn't true, I would tell you plainly that that's not the case. But God's house, God's place for us is massive. He says, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. It doesn't really matter if we got, I've heard people testify this, it doesn't matter if we, get a mansion or we just get a little log cabin somewhere in the corner of glory. And I laugh and chuckle at that because there's lots of room. He's going to go prepare a place for each one of us. But what's going to make it home is not how big of a place we got. What's going to make it home is that's where Jesus is. And we're going to dwell with him. He's going to receive us to himself. That where I am, he said, there you may be also. Yeah, absolutely, Donna. Preach on. And that is home. That is home for us. God's got the place. He himself, God himself, is going to be there with us. And last couple of chapters of Revelation, man, they are awesome. Because it describes it. All right, 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 9. I'm going back to the NIV for this one. All right, it says, for if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them off to hell, putting them in chains of darkness to be held for judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world when he brought the flood on its ungodly people, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, if he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah by burning them to ashes, and made them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly, and if he rescued Lot, a righteous man who was distressed by the depraved conduct of the lawless, for that righteous man living among them day after day was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. If this is so, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from the trials and to hold the unrighteousness for punishment on the day of judgment. Now I say, David, we were having such a good little conversation about heaven and home and New Jerusalem and those mansions. Why in the world did we switch to this? And that's because we're talking about that day that we are going home. In the scriptures, it tells us that the time that is coming, that's going to happen before our trip home, before our trip out of here, says it's going to be like it was in the days of Noah. And it's going to be like it was in the days of Lot. Now we're talking about the end times and Revelation here a little bit, and there's lots of scriptures. There's lots of scriptures about it. And, it's like a big puzzle. I refer to that very often and stuff. But one thing we can rest assured about is those passages where it says it's going to be like Noah and it's going to be like the days when Lot was there. In fact, let me read Luke 17, verses 26 to 29. Now, this is from a translation I don't quote very often, but I thought it just said it the right way here. He said, remember what happened to Noah when he was alive. It will be like that at the time when the Son of Man returns to earth. In Noah's time, people were eating their meals every day. Men and women continued to marry, and they continued to do this until the day Noah went into his boat. And then it rained for a long time, and there was deep water everywhere, and the water killed all the people. In verse 28, the same kind of thing happened when Lot was alive. People in the city of Sodom were eating their meals every day, and they were buying and selling things, and they were planting their seeds, and they were building their houses. But one day Lot went away from Sodom, and on the same day God caused it to rain fire and burning stones from the sky, and this killed all the people in Sodom. In that very first passage that we read, 1 Thessalonians, it said that we have hope because we have hope in the resurrection. Jesus is coming to get us and to take us home. But the rest of mankind, they really have no hope. You can see that, at funerals today. If you go to a funeral, there's some people that, take it really hard, and everyone takes death really, really hard. But look into people's eyes. If they don't believe in Jesus, and they don't believe in the resurrection, and they don't believe that the Lord is coming back for believers, and that person's not a believer, this is the end for them. This person laying in the casket, this person that they've known, they've been their friend or their relative, they have no hope. And so this is the last time they ever expect to be with someone. I lost my mother at the end of 2024. She passed away from cancer. And, I grieved. I was actually in the hospital on the day of her funeral. And I remember when I was finally by myself, my last visitor had left and I was all in the room all by myself. I had my moment when I grieved the passing of my mother. And of course I had all these wires coming off of me. The next thing I know, I looked up and I could see a window in the door, a little narrow window, and there was like 6 sets of eyes looking in at me because they wanted to see what in the world was going on. I'm sure all the needles and gauges and computers were freaking out because I was having my moment of mourning. But I got that, emotion out of me. And while I still miss my mother, I know that I'm going to see her again. And that hope is there. It's a brief separation and a brief parting. We're going to go home. We're going to go home together. She'll be among the crowd that gets there first because anybody that's alive won't stop them or won't beat them to the punch. They're going to go first. And I may be among that group. I may be going up on the first summons with her. Be in the first round. Nobody knows. I could be alive. I could be deceased. But you know what? It's not something that I grieved for about day to day. I got the emotions out of me. But then my hope kicks in. And it's like, I'm going to see her again. And that is the hope that we have. And it makes it something that, I receive the comfort of the Lord thinking about that. But that day when Jesus comes back to receive us unto himself, he says it's going to be like Noah. And we read Noah in 2 Peter. He said he was a preacher of righteousness. And he preached to the people that were, facing this flood. They didn't believe it. They had no idea when they woke up that morning that they were going to be taking a long swim and there wasn't going to be any place for them to get out of the water. They just had no idea. But that water came and got them. But Noah and his family were safe because God lifted them out. That while everybody else around them was dying, they were lifted out. In the same moment that everybody else was dying, they were being rescued. And he said it's going to be like in the day of Lot. Luke 17, what we just read, it said they were planting their seeds in the city of Sodom. They were buying and selling. They were eating their meals. It was just life as normal. They got up that morning and they had no idea that was the last day they were going to live. They had plans. They were doing stuff. When you plant a garden, you plan on harvesting. But it said then all of a sudden, Lot was gone. He went away. And on the same day, God caused it to rain fire and burning stones from the sky, and it killed those people. God's judgment came on the very day that they were rescued, that they got out of there. And he said it was going to be just like that when Jesus comes. Lot lived among lawless, unrighteous people, and it sickened him what he saw. And what I see in the world today, it sickens me. People are so depraved. So much evil that goes on. People just go on shooting sprees. They don't care who they're hitting. They're just having a shooting spree. It's just so sickening. And the judgment day for the rest of mankind is coming. God has determined that it is coming. And when it comes, that is the same day that we are going to be rescued and get out of this place. He's going to come and receive us unto himself. We read Revelation 6, and this will be our last scripture for the day. Revelation 6. Now I'm reading the last couple of verses of chapter 6 and the first couple of verses of chapter 7. And when John wrote the book of Revelation, there weren't chapters and verses. There wasn't separation. It was just a continuation of the same writing, of the same letter. And so I'm going to read it the way it was originally written, without a separation between chapter 6 and 7, okay? Picking up with verse 12 in Revelation chapter 6. It says, I watched as the Lamb broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became dark as black cloth, and the moon became as red as blood. And the stars of the sky fell to the earth like green figs falling from a tree shaken by a strong wind. The sky was rolled up like a scroll, and all of the mountains and islands were moved from their places. Then everyone, the kings of the earth, the rulers, the generals, the wealthy, the powerful, and every slave and free person all hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they cried to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to survive? Then I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds, so they did not blow on the earth or the sea or even on any tree. And I saw another angel coming up from the east, carrying the seal of the living God, and he shouted to those four angels who had been given power to harm land and sea, wait! Don't harm the land and sea or the trees until we have placed the seal of God on the foreheads of his servants. And I heard how many were marked with the seal of God. 144,000 were sealed from all the tribes of Israel. This is another one of those scriptures that is referring to the moment when Jesus comes to receive us unto himself, where it says the seal of God is going to be on their foreheads. That is another way of saying that they are being rescued. He's saying, these people are mine and I'm coming to get them. And basically God is not going to allow the disaster that's going to face everybody else to come until they are rescued. So just like in the day of Noah, the rescue happens at the same moment destruction is coming upon the rest of the people. And just like in the day of Lot's all of a sudden gone and then the cities are destroyed. So God is sending these angels to come get us. Jesus receives us, and then the hammer falls. These people are in their hiding places. Now there's another little video that I've got that can kind of give you a visual image of what this sentence is, where these people are going into the caves and calling for the rocks to fall on them and hide them. You know, if a big rock falls on you, that's generally not considered a good thing. You know, I used to watch Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Trust me, having a big rock hit you is not a good thing. All right, it's you know, you end up flat as a pancake or something like that. So they're not asking. That's not what they're asking for. It's like, okay, what are they asking for? The feeling, the context is they're going in there to hide, and they're wanting covering. They're wanting something to cover the opening. And so you could think about, you know, putting big rocks in front of the door. But let me play a little short clip of a video, and this is actually from a movie that came out in 1983 called War Games. And basically, they think they're going to be in a nuclear war, and so they're going into the mountain to hide. And so let me share this video clip. It's just very short. Uh-oh, what did I do? Sharing. Oh, there it went. All right. Share this video and... All right, here we go. See that thing swinging there? Run inside. Hurry, hurry, hurry. When you read Revelation chapter 6, verses 15 to 17, that is the image you should have in your mind when you read that. We live in modern times, and John the Revelator was referring to, I mean, he was living in a time without technology and invention like we think of it today. And when he was talking about going into caves and the rocks falling and closing the opening, that's what he could visualize. That's all he could do to describe this. But in this modern age that we live in, there are places that the governments of the world have built into caves that hold all their weapons and their attack. Think about, like right now, we're engaged with this war with Iran. And they've been bombing and bombing and bombing, and still they've got missiles they're shooting out. Well, guess what? They have got these giant fortifications underground, and that's where they're storing their stuff. And if there was ever a war, you better believe the leaders would go hide in their holes and shut those doors. And that is what would happen here. A disaster that people can see is coming, they would go hide in there. There's a great movie, if you've not ever seen it, it's worth going to see, called Deep Impact. An asteroid is coming, and they go, and everybody that has money, well, they're going in first, and then they have a lottery for whatever room's left to bring other people in. That is what verses 15 to 17 is talking about here. They have seen God's wrath approaching. They have seen God's judgment with enough time to prepare for it. And they go hide in the rocks, that is in the caves or in these deep fortifications that they've built, and they close the doors, the rocks fall, that is, they close the doors and they're trying to protect themselves from the danger they see coming in, and they know enough about the danger that they say this is something, how can anybody survive it? Guess where the Christians are going to be? We're not going to be inside with them. They're going to kick us out. You can't come in these fortifications with us. We're going to be outside, out in the open. But guess what? God's going to rescue us. The angels are going to come down and catch us up. And we're going to forever be with the Lord from that moment. They can go in there and hide all they want to, because that's all the hope they've got in. And good luck. They're going to die. There are going to be lots of death and destruction. Actually, it's really strange. The Revelation actually talks about there's actually going to be survivors of that aren't Christians and aren't saved. They aren't God's people. And they're not down in that hole. Some of them are going to make it. It's quite amazing. But boy, it's going to be a bad day. A bad day on planet Earth. But I just want to leave you with that image that if you're not being rescued in that moment, those other people are going to be hiding and going to be shutting the doors behind them. That's the image that you ought to see when you read these verses. Hide us from the Lamb, for his great day of wrath is coming. Who is able to survive? It's not going to be a flood. It might be something a lot like the days of Lot, though. We'll save that for another day of preaching. But to understand that the same day that they are going to be destroyed is the same day we're going to be rescued. And so the thought that I want to leave you is this. A lot of people think about Revelation, and they think about, basically, how bad the Antichrist is going to be, and how bad things are going to be for Christians. And everybody's got it in their mind that the purpose of the rapture is for God to rescue us from the devil's wrath. And that is not what this Bible teaches us. Think about World War II, Europe, Hitler, and they killed a lot of the Jews. That was the devil's wrath on the Jews at the time. The rescue for them, for the few that survived, came from the invading armies, the Allies. But God didn't. When things of the future, the tribulation, the rule of the Antichrist, when that comes, and there's terrible things that are happening. The thing that's important to understand is the rapture is not to rescue us from those things. God is getting us out of the way so that he can smack down on everybody else, so that his judgment can fall. And that's something to keep in mind about the rapture. The purpose of the rapture is not to get us out of the way of the devil's wrath. It's to get us out of the way of God's wrath. And God wants to pour it out on everybody else because the time has come. It takes a lot to make God angry. But when that time comes, he's going to be plenty angry. But that day for us is a day of hope. They might think they've locked us out of their deep structures. They might think they've, kicked us out of their safe place, but it's completely the opposite is true. We're going to be safe in the arms of Jesus, and they're going to die in their holes and in their caves. And that is the story of going home. We're going to go home to be with Jesus. And we're not going to think about being in danger anymore. We're not going to be worried about what things might happen to us here. We're not going to have to think about, living another day, because we've got the rest of eternity to spend with Jesus. And it's going to be a wonderful thing. So I hope the message has been a blessing to you today. Gives you some food for thought. And again, everybody believes something different, and I have no criticism. At the end of a sermon, regardless of how you believe about Revelation, you know what you know, and now you know a little bit more about what I know, and then everybody gets to make up their own mind. And I'm happy when people make up their mind and they know why they believe what they believe. But I am looking forward to going home under whatever circumstances that is. Amen. All right, that is all the sermons. Anybody got any comments or questions? again, for the weeks that are coming up, we always do a Q&A sermon series, and Randy kicked us off last week with a question that we got. But if we're going to go forward with that, we need some questions. So if you think of some questions that you want to ask, be sure to send those in, because that determines how long that sermon series is. We're happy to answer any questions that you have for as long as those questions keep rolling in. So, have you got any questions yet this week? No questions? I didn't get any questions, so it's going to be a short sermon series if we don't get some questions. Anyways, love you all. I guess we will close with announcements. And remember, on the prayer requests that Randy went through already, take the bulletin, print a copy out, and take that into your prayer closet this week. And let's remember all the names that we have on the prayer list. I'm going to turn it over to Randy. God bless you all.